Hello everyone, in today's video, I'll show you how to create this beautiful, colorful conch shell in Procreate. We will paint together and I'll guide you by sharing my favorite techniques to bring this ocean jewel to life. Whether you're just starting out your artistic journey or an advanced skilled artist, these tips will help you take your work to the next level. So take a moment to cozy up, pour yourself a drink, and let's get started. All the brushes I'm using and the canvas will be found in the description below. You can also download the free sketch and the color palettes there as well. For today's demonstration, I'll be using the rough groove texture canvas, but you can use any canvas you like. And I've created the color palettes for you so you can follow along with me as we go through this tutorial together. And we'll start with the light cream tone color. And as you can see, I have already imported the sketch here, and we're going to create a new layer underneath that sketch. And make sure all the layers that we're going to create is going to be underneath the watercolor texture canvas effect. And we'll start with the wet on dry brush, and we'll fill in the general area of the conch shell here. Since I decided to place the light source on the right side, I'll add more value and deeper shading to the left side to create more contrast and form. And we're not going for ultra realism here, but just enough for shading on the left to hint the depth and the light direction. So we'll start from the left with 100% opacity and 100% size, and working along the lines like this. And we can fill in the areas of the center much easily without any worry. And this is going to be the base layer of the conch shell. And we can move our way to the right side and put another layer on the corners like this. And it's okay to have overlayers because it won't make a difference when we layer on top of other colors. But if you prefer a smoother look, you can always use a moving blender and blend in the two layers together. Now from there, we're going to create a new layer and pick the sand tone color and create depth with this tone, focusing on the left side, giving it a bit more of a three-dimensional look. And just like this, like how we did it before, along the lines, and we're gonna go halfway through. And if you are enjoying these tutorials, hit that like button, subscribe to our channel where you'll be notified when new videos are released. So with this tone color, we're going to fill half of the conch shell in the left side like this. And don't forget the little corner at the top. We're also going to put some mid-tone colors between the grooves that reflect the conch growth. The spiral patterns create beautiful natural forms ridges, giving more texture and that iconic conch shell look. And from there, we're going to create a new layer again and pick this darker beige tone color now. And same thing, more depth and contrast on the left side, just like this. And once again, we're going to add small grooves to create more contrast. And don't forget the top as well. Now we're going to blend some of the tone colors. We're going to combine the first light and mid-tone colors like this using our two fingers, pinching them together, and use the moving blender, keeping the size to around 20%, and we're going to mix in the two-tone colors. And after that, we're going to combine the darker tone layer as well to complete the tone mixtures like this. This technique will allow you to give you a smoother effect of blending of the two-tone colors, and lastly, adding more texture of the darker tone color. And now we're going to focus on the inner shell of the conch. So from there, we're going to create a new layer and pick this bright pink tone color, and we're going to focus on layering the colors together. So we're going to pick the wet on dry brush and focusing on the inner side with just one swipe just like this. And since the wet on dry brush is pressure sensitive, you can taper off on the edges, but give it more bold look in the center because that's where we want the viewer's eyes to be, going to the center of the conch. And now we're going to pick this light purple tone color and we're going to create a new layer and do the same thing, putting it on top of that layer, slightly tapering off at the end. And then add another third layer and add the light blue tone color. Just like this on top. And lastly, we're going to pick another layer, create this yellow tone color right on the edge, just like this. Now from there, to avoid over smudging, we're going to combine the first of the bright pink and purple tone color first, using our 2 fingers and pinch them together, just like this. But we're going to use the regular blender now, keeping the size to around 25%, and we're going to drag out the colors from the center outwards from the conch shell, giving that natural watercolor spreading of the tone colors. And now we're going to combine the blue again like this, pushing out the purple tone colors with the blue, and then combine the original base layer with the layers of the blues that we created, just like this. And then finish it off by combining all the layers of the yellow and the original colors that we had, and pulling the colors down this time. And to give that realistic watercolor effect, we're going to mix in some of the colors in unpredictable patterns, bright pinks outwards, and pulling in some of the blues inwards. And now we're going to create a new layer and pick this brown tone color and use the embossing tool. And we're going to zoom in and add some more details between the grooves of the shell. And just follow along the sketch like this, creating some beautiful grooves between each layer. And we're going to reduce the opacity to around 50% to add some details, adding more textures and patterns to the shell. And we can even reduce the opacity slightly even more to around 30% and add more slight variant lines like this. And now we're going to create another layer and use the wet on dry brush. And now we're going to add some of those watercolor stained hard edge effects by reducing the opacity to around 40% and focusing on the areas where we put the mid-tone colors and along the lines on the sides like this. And we're going to create some of those watercolor stain looks here on the grooves on the top corners, along the lines where we put the mid-tone colors. This not only creates that realistic watercolor stain look, but as well as enhancing that contrast and 3D look where the light source is fading away. And we can even reduce the opacity to another 30% and adding a bit more layers closer to the center. The key to this is adding layers to give more value to the patterns that we have here, but allowing the top to be brighter than the corners of the sides to give more contrast in that 3D effect. And now we're going to create some patterns on the conch shell. So we're going to create a new layer, pick this bright orange tone color, and use a soft brush now, keeping the size to around 10 to 15%, and we're going to create some stripes along the lines of the conch. Just like this. Wiggling it around, going up and down. You can add a bit more color by going over the layer again. Just like this. And we can reduce the size to around 5%, focusing on the corners on the top like this, enhancing the look. It's a simple and effective way to give that pattern look on the conch shell with some texture on it. Now we're going to create this bloom or cauliflower watercolor effect. Now to do this, we're going to go to the most bottom layer that we have, and we're going to create a new layer from the bottom and use the bright pink tone color that we used before. use a salt brush, keeping the size to around 20%. And we're just going to press quite hard to spread those cauliflowers across the inner conch shell, just like this, as it gives that natural, beautiful cauliflower flare effect. And we can even go even darker with another added tone, darker red tone color in the center to bring their viewer's eyes to the center here. Now we can use the eraser tool. I like to use the fine line brush and just erase the paint colors that we added on top of the conch shells, leaving the areas of the cauliflower effect that we made. Now we're going to go back to the top layer that we have, and we're going to create a new layer and pick that bright sand tone color that we use. We're going to pick the Epic Splash brush, keeping the size to the lowest setting that we have and to around 30% opacity. And we're just going to sprinkle it along the lines on the top of the conch shell. This will give a subtle, natural watercolor effect look, where the watercolor paint sprinkled on top. And since we determined the light source coming from the right side, we're going to create some light reflections. So make sure we're on the top layers, pick the white tone color, use the gouache brush, keeping the opacity to around 90% and size to around 25%. And since the light source is coming from the right, we're going to put the light reflections on the top and to the right here, like this, along the sides in the middle of the conch shell. And also add the light reflections on the top of the conch shell grooves. And now we're going to add some light reflections in the inner side of the conch shell, but we're going to reduce the opacity to around 54%, giving it a bit more subtle reflection of the inner shell. And just like this, following along, creating more lighter tone colors as it fades away in this inside, just like this. And we can reduce the opacity to around 30% to give more lines, focusing more subtle light reflections going inwards. We're also going to add a small light reflection on the bottom of the conch shell. Light bounces off the surface below, so it helps to make the object feel more real and grounded. Now from there, we're going to create a shadow. So select the most bottom layer. We're going to create a new layer and hold on to that, and we're going to drag it at the most bottom layer. And we're going to pick this dark blue tone color to create this shadow using the wet on dry brush, keeping the opacity to around 40% and 100% size, and starting from the left as it tapers off slightly to the conch shape, and leaving a small gap as it is lifted off the ground, and go all the way along the lines in the bottom here, like this. Put another layer of darkness of the blue tone color, like this, focusing on the deeper ends in the center of the conch. So we're going to create some more shadows in the grooves as well. So we're going to go out to the top of the layers underneath the light source that we've created, create a new layer, and pick this lighter blue tone color and keep the opacity to around 30% and 100% size, and just focusing on creating some of the shadows behind the grooves as it is protruding outwards a little bit. And a little bit at the bottom here as well. Now we can remove the sketch. As you can see, the light base tone color is pretty faint. So what we can do is increase the hardness. But to do this, we're going to decrease the sketch here to around 20%. And we're going to create a new layer on top of the sketch and use that bright orange sand tone color that we used, and use the hard edge brush and keep the size to around 30%. And we're going to create some harder edges just like this, enhancing the look of the painting along the lines of the grooves and along the lines of the inside of the conch shell, just like this, going in one direction from left to right. And now we can finish it off by picking this bright tone pink tone color And you can use the same layer that we have. And we're going to use the wet splash brush, keeping the size to 100% and opacity at 100% as well. And we're just going to sprinkle them by tapping around the screen, just like this, scattered away. Adding some of the blue tone colors as well, since we added them in the inner conch shell. And then the purple, just like this. And there we have it, a beautiful ocean jewel conch shell created on your iPad. And if you enjoyed this tutorial and want to continue painting with me, I have tons of other videos for you to follow along. So click on the next video and I'll see you there.